Save the Semantics, episode 135. It is January 17, 2021. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I talk for however long I want, but usually I'm pretty consistent at around 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so. And I just kind of talk about, whatever the fuck. There's only so much to talk about, but that's just kind of what this is. It's just me rambling for a decent amount of time. When was the last time I recorded? See, I have to look back now and shit to see. So it's been a couple weeks, looks like. Yeah. I mean, it's been a crazy month already. Start of the year, I would say, in terms of, news and that sort of thing. Wait, let me check again. December 31st. So, last episode was at the end of the year, so this will be the first episode of this year. Quick recap of things that have happened. Just a crazy amount of shit that I'm not going to get into. But it's just a lot, for sure. And yeah, things are definitely moving forward in a sense, both, outside of my life and within my own life, I would say. I've just been keeping busy with work, which is good. It's definitely felt these last couple of months, for the most part, I've felt very, of course it's taken some time to get used to the routine of work every day. And I've been very fortunate that I haven't had to, commute or anything like that. I've just been in place. So that's been nice. But I'd say it's been like a healthy, steady flow for the most part. I felt pretty comfortable with where I'm at. Obviously the type of work that I'm doing is going to pick up as the days and weeks progress, but right now I'd say I'm doing pretty good for the most part. I'd say, I think if I don't get distracted by shit, if I'm just kind of focused on whatever task I'm working on, whatever that may be, then I'm like, all right, I feel good about things, without without taking too much from my externalities, I would say, right? I feel pretty good about things. Things for me, my mood can shift so quickly. This isn't to say that I don't have any, I have never had a case of bipolar or anything like that. I just mean in the sense of things can just radically shift my mood and so quickly. If anything, seeing any sort of news article that's very emotionally impactful, it's always gonna, I don't know, recently it's felt it's done a number on my my mental and my mood for the day, honestly. I was I think last time I said that I essentially, deleted Reddit. I reinstalled it just to keep up with things and media and that sort of shit. But yeah, it's I've just noticed how quickly things can change just by reading a post or whatever, I think I was reading, I don't know, I forgot what I was reading exactly, but I think it was probably relationship advice. I tell myself not to go there for shit, and then sometimes I just end up there because sometimes a lot of the posts are so just kind of insane, and they just end up on the front page, and so it's hard not to click into it and be like, holy fucking shit, this is some juicy content, even though this is someone's life is being completely and utterly ruined right now, but this is solid content right here. Again, I've talked about how there's a lot of there's a lot of instances where these stories could be completely fake, you know? But when they're not, it's like, well, shit, this is someone's actual life at stake here, kind of. They've, talking about being emotionally and, physically manipulated in a sense. Maybe not physically abused, Like, there's those types of stories, and you're just like, fuck. This fucking sucks, and it just puts you in a shit, Like, it puts you, like, it's sort of in the headspace of whoever wrote the post. And you kind of, I don't know, at least from my perspective, I sort of try to relate to that in a sense where I'm kind of empathetic to their situation or sympathetic to them. And I get kind of wrapped up in it. And I mean, I think, it's maybe, I think it's natural to kind of be, emotionally affected by someone else's story. But, like, sometimes it's just, there's only so much of it that you can personally take. Especially if it's someone you have no, like, you have no relation to them in like, neither as a friend or an acquaintance. Like, you have absolutely no connection to them. You don't even know what they look like. You don't even know who they are. But, either their either their writing is solid and you're like, okay, this is solid. This is a well-written story, and you get kind of consumed by that, or they, talk about their experiences in a very raw sense where it's like, this feels pretty genuine for the most part, so I can kind of feel a lot more empathetic towards it because it seems realistic. It seems like something that anyone can go through, so then you kind of get sucked into that. And again, I don't think it's not a bad thing to have empathy or a sympathy or whatever, but in my cases, I just feel that sometimes it's just like it's too much for yourself to handle, especially if it's like a situation where you just have no, sense of idea of, you don't have really a solution to provide, and you're just kind of reading it as an outsider. Yeah, so I don't know. It's a lot to kind of take in. I think that it's all like, as I usually kind of preach, it's just sort of everything in moderation and that sort of thing. So yeah, I've been trying to do. I think I've been doing a decent job of, like, lessening my consumption of shit. Right. News obviously is something that is important to keep an eye out for, but I just don't think it's good to get sucked up into that, for sure. Yeah, I think I do a pretty good job about that, mainly because I sort of tell myself, like, if you follow down these news stories, you're going to end up going down this rabbit hole, and you're going to be stuck there for a little while. And, like, it's good to be informed, but there's only so much that you can be informed about without, to a point where it becomes kind of detrimental to your own self-being and shit, right? This is not really anything crazy, because I think that this is just sort of common sense, right? Like, if you get wrapped up in something that really doesn't, you have an understanding about what is going on. So say, like, I guess you could talk about that in terms of conspiracies and that sort of thing, right? I think that's sort of like that's sort of both the train of thought and sort of the sequence of events that happened for, like, the QAnon people who, right, some of them are like the people that raided the Capitol. Those people, get sort of absorbed in this conspiracy of sorts, and they feel that there's sort of a deeper truth that, so the media isn't revealing, in a sense, that there's sort of a plan in place, right? I've talked about this before, and this isn't really anything that I'm super knowledgeable by any sense, but I understand how someone can kind of get to that point of becoming, where conspiracy is sort of their reality, in a sense, right? In order, there has to be sort of this set plan in place, or else it doesn't make sense to them, right? Like, why, the whole point of the QAnon, my brief understanding of that movement is the fact that movement and conspiracy is that, Trump is supposed to be sort of this person who reveals all these details about politicians and these higher up powers. Like he was supposed to kind of, kind of be a whistleblower on all of these pedophiles and all these criminals in these top positions. Um, they just sort of placed their belief on him for some reason. I haven't read too deep into it, and I don't think I will, but that's just sort of my understanding of it. Because, for a lot of these people, it just doesn't make sense why certain things are the way they are. Like, they don't look at, I feel like they don't really look at the history of things. In order to kind of understand why things are the way they are, you need to do way more research as opposed to just sticking to a single narrative to what these people think, if that makes sense at all. I'm saying that people sort of follow a perspective that they can kind of agree to, that appeals to them, and then anything that deviates from that is false or is, fake news or whatever. So I don't know. It's a scary time for sure to be living in, with so many people that kind of fall into that camp of not believing in essentially anything. And it's even hard for me to kind of decipher some things, right? Because there is some sense of truth in there being, fake news and that sort of thing. The media puts out, but I think it's much more, it's very, there's so many ways in which news is manipulated to gain an appeal to a viewership. Like, it's not really, I don't think, in my perspective, it's not really that the media reporting false information. It's just the way they're reporting that information, right? Like that's sort of the gist of it. The way CNN tells the news is different from the way Fox News tells the news. Like there's just differing coverage of it, right? Like that's also not a very new thing either. But it's just, but yeah, it's sometimes it's difficult to really. It can be difficult to kind of tell apart some things, if that makes sense. I think that if you feel like the media, the general media, the mainstream media is essentially not telling the truth, then you're gonna turn to other sources. And if those people are saying, like, we provide a more nuanced perspective than the mainstream media, you're like, oh, okay, I kind of like that. I kind of like that you have that, you're providing that perspective for people like me who are confused and don't understand what the fuck is going on. And then they put it in terms that make sense, but in reality, it's manipulative. It's also providing a very biased perspective on things, right? I think it's very difficult for any form of news publication nowadays not to have some sort of slant, right? So I think, yeah, everyone has an agenda, that sort of thing. So it's hard not to kind of be a little skeptical of these things. So that's the one kind of thing that I kind of maybe understand from the crazy Trump supporters' perspective. You know what I mean? Like, for example, I'll give somewhat of a closer to home example. So where I live, there's been, I don't know if it's been the case recently, but a little while ago there were people that were posted up, and they had this campaign. They were petitioning to recall Gavin Newsom, who's the governor of California. Essentially, their perspective is that they felt that he was not doing, him shutting down, essentially ordering to shut down businesses, was affecting them in that way. But it's very clear for me that these people are, conservative people. No, like none of them wear masks. Like they fall into that camp. It's hard. Like there's never, especially when it comes to certain things, like there's just never. It's hard for there to be like a common ground. Even if I like do agree with some points that they make, I agree that Newsom has some questionable policies, and he's been a hypocrite in the sense that he's ordered these rules about wearing a mask and what is it, closing the interiors of restaurants when he was seen at like a high-end restaurant with like a bunch of people. Like that's sort of the hypocrisy on his part, but that's not really I don't think that's why that's not the reason that these like recall Newsom people are petitioning. No, that's not the reason why. The reason why is because they feel that, there's this, that their, businesses are being shut down, and they believe it's the governor's fault when it's, so much more than that. So yeah, I don't know. It's just that I think, I've said, I don't know if I've actually said this, but there's there's cases of where I'm like, I understand where these people are coming from, but we're just on, very different sides of it. I agree to a sense that more should be done, but we are not sort of on the same page in that way. I disagree with the fact that you're not wearing a mask. I think you're pretty stupid for that. I'm not going to say that to their face, but that's sort of how I feel about it, It's like you you have these perspectives, but I just don't think we're not on the same page. Kind of, I don't know how to, like, it's hard to, it's so hard, There's always like talk about trying to find like a middle ground and that sort of thing, and I just think it's incredibly difficult to do that. So there's just no real. It almost feels pointless to get into those types of arguments. I don't really. I don't talk to people. I'm holed up in my house for the most part. Like there's just no. I don't need to do any of that, so I'm not going to. I'm not going to go out and create discussion with people. I'm not going to any bars or anything like that anytime soon. So I miss going out. On that note, just kind of going off of that, I do miss going out and shit. I really do. It's been a whole year since I've done anything relating to like social activity. It's been such a long time. I haven't done any, I haven't done any outgoings. I haven't really, it's been a minute. I mean, I have, hung out with people over the past year, but it's been so far in between that it's just not. I don't even really, consider those to be real, get-togethers, because it's still under the paranoia of like the pandemic, so it's a little hard to enjoy yourself when you have this fucking looming problem above you. Yeah, I miss that. I miss going to the theaters too. I've been watching some videos kind of discussing the the shift from the traditional theater setting to streaming. I mean, that's that's sort of been a discussion for the past year or so, but it's definitely a lot more once 2020 has sort of gone by, it definitely feels a lot more relevant now that it is very much the case where a lot of these big movies are going to streaming platforms instead of like theaters, or if it is the case, they sort of split it between streaming platforms and a theater. I haven't been to, obviously I haven't been to theater since, I don't even know. I think, I'm trying to think what the last movie I watched was. I think it was Parasite. I don't know if that was, man, that's crazy. I can't even think of, I don't remember if Parasite came out in 2019 or 2018. That's crazy. It's it's just completely losing track of time. Um, I think it was Parasite. That was, that's the one I remembered the most. I just remember, um, yeah, just going by myself and having a really good time watching that movie. It was a really, really great movie. I've talked about it before. Yeah, I'm trying to. I'm really trying to think. I don't think there was anything else after that. Um, so I mean, if I never go to a theater again, I guess that's a pretty good one to end it off on. But I do kind of miss going to the theater. In college, there were a couple times, or maybe there was like one or two times where I went to the theater. I skipped class, and I remember I skipped class and I went to watch Endgame, and that was a good decision. I definitely don't regret that. Um, and that was great. I thought it was really, that was a definite theater experience, and it was toward the tail end of the that movie's showings. I think it was um, most people that I knew already seen it, and so I was kind of the last one to get around to it. But I'm glad I did watch it in theaters. Um, yeah. No, wait, I'm trying to think. Spider-Man. Was Spider-Man? Maybe it was Spider-Man. Maybe Spider-Man was the last one I saw. I don't know. I don't remember. But yeah, I do miss it. I do miss that kind of experience. I miss that. I miss, yeah, just going out and shit. Yeah, it sucks. It does suck. Even after a year of kind of getting adjusted to whatever this is right now, it's hard not to be like, I want to go back out and just eat whatever the fuck and do whatever the fuck in a sense. So hopefully that comes around. I've been trying to keep up with some news with the vaccine. I think I know there's issues with like the rollout and stuff. But I think at least in my area, there's been some rollouts of like the first dose. I know you, like for security's sake, you need like a second dose. Um, but I'm hopeful for that. I think it's good that there's it's good that we have that, obviously. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's been that. I'm gonna try to move away from talking about just shit. It's hard not to. I think it's hard not to talk about just the shit that's been going on. There's really not. It doesn't feel like there's a whole lot else to really reflect on. But anyways, I think I'm getting back into anime, which is good because I haven't watched any shows for the last like few months. As I've mentioned, I got back into Code Geass, which I haven't watched in literal months. I think it was back in July. I was watching it last, so I had to kind of get caught up on what was happening. But yeah, I'm nearing the end. I'm about to finish it. I think I have a few more episodes left, but really good. I've talked about this, but it's I don't know if I would consider it one of my favorites, but it's been a very enjoyable watch for sure. In terms of entertainment value, it's definitely up there. I think there are some issues with the pacing. It's a little hard to I get it, it's a little hard to put together that show because there's just so much going on in every single scene. Like it's insane. There are no pauses for that show. It feels like there are a few episodes that are kind of gag episodes in between. There are like maybe two of those for each season. There are two seasons. that involve like chasing a cat or whatever the fuck. And the rest is just non-stop, just shit against the wall. There's fucking thousands of people getting killed every episode. It's like, it's insane. It's just like an insane show. It just keeps going. It just doesn't stop. But I think, I'm guessing that they had to do a certain number of episodes with the time allotted, so they had to just fill each episode to the brim with just shit. And I feel like they've done a really good job. I feel like they've just, in terms of entertainment, like I said, it's definitely up there for me. Very easy to get into, I feel like. Characters are all pretty engaging, even though there are so many characters in that show. But, Lelouch is one of the more interesting main characters of a show that I've watched. And yeah, everyone else is great. So I'm reaching the end of that. And I'm excited to kind of get back into watching whatever else, because I've just sort of had a dry spell when it comes to watching any sort of show. And again, there's just so much out there, so I think it's just better to kind of stick to one thing and then kind of work from there. So I'm starting with ending off Code Geass, and I'm thinking about maybe getting into the second season of ReZero. That was what I was kind of excited for this year, but things happened, so I haven't really gotten around to it. But I'm excited to get back into that world. I think ReZero has been up there as one of my favorite shows of the last, I don't know, of the ones I've seen. Also, I think Promised Neverland came out with another season as well. It's been a while since I've really caught up with any of these shows, but it seems like there's a lot of good stuff out there. But it just depends on what my motivation is and whether or not I have the time to watch. But yeah, I'm kind of I'm excited to watch watch something new, or not necessarily new, but get back into something that I've enjoyed in the past. I also started to play Ni no Kuni. I don't know if I talked about this last time, but I've been wanting to play sort of the newer, updated version. It's still an older game. Like this version of the game came out in 2014, and then it was released for the Switch either last year or a couple years ago. So it's the 2014 version, which was originally released on the PS3 or the PS4. I think it was a PS3. And I have the original DS version, which came out in like 2012 or something like that, which is crazy. So there are a lot of differences. The story, for the most part, is the same. I think they've made some changes, but the combat is very different from the DS. The DS had this sort of top-down view, like you put your characters, or you put your party members on like a board essentially, and you kind of have to coordinate where to put them. If you put them closer to the front, they do more damage. If you put them to the back, the enemy won't get to them. Essentially, sort of pretty basic JRPG battle mechanics. But this one is a little more action RPG-ish. But I've been having fun with it. I think I'm excited to kind of get into sort of the I don't know what the game play mechanic is called, but essentially it's like Pokemon, where you can collect monsters and shit. But there's a different term for that. But I'm excited to kind of get into that part of the game where I can try to get more party members and shit. So that's been cool. That's been fun. The music in it is fantastic. That hasn't changed. It's so good. It's composed by Joe Hisashi, who did, who composed the best Ghibli movies. So like Castle in the Sky, Howl's Moving Castle. Pretty sure he did Princess Mononoke, but the best ones. So the soundtrack is fantastic. The art style is Ghibli. So it really feels like you're playing within you're playing like a Ghibli game, which is really cool. So yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with that. And outside of that, just same old, same old. I've been trying to get back into running. I feel like I should have ran this weekend, but I decided not to. But this last past week, I I've ran Monday through Friday, which is very rare for me. I've been getting up like early to try to run and shit, and it's been good. Like I feel like I can kind of see myself getting it back into shape in a sense. So that's kind of cool. I'm gonna try, I'm gonna try my best to commit to that because I think it'll be good for me to work out again because that's when I feel like I'm kind of being in shape generally feels good. Even if uh the process to get there is sometimes incredibly painful, but we're gonna try to get there. So we're keeping things moving, as they would say. Who says that? Who the fuck knows, man? I said it. All right. I'm gonna try to keep things moving. I've been talking for 30 minutes, which is not what I expected, but sometimes that just happens. Just felt like there's a lot to talk about. A lot of bullshit in the first half. So I'm glad whoever listened muddled through that. And we're gonna call it. This has been Save the Semantics. Signing off.